None of this is really all that techy. It's just communicating in new and different ways on different platforms. But, if you can write a paragraph or a sentence, you can do social media. So I don't think it should be like this mystical thing. At AARP in particular, I feel really smart in hindsight, but back in 2007, it wasn't like people were driving at AARP to really get older people engaged in social media. That was really early. At the time, I was working in media relations team, and I was really just researching my interns to make sure that they weren't irresponsible. So that was my gateway into social media. As I started thinking about a strategy for the organization, I realized one of the things was that grandkids were the gateway drug for social media for AARP members. And so they were getting online and getting on social to see the pictures of their grandkids. And that led to a huge opportunity for AARP to educate people, to teach them how to use it, to teach them safety and best practices. And then eventually down the road, and I think you see some of this play out, around this latest sort of healthcare round, engaging members on their personal social media in pushing back on issues and causes. And so that was really a long lead play back in 2008. Seems really smart in this kind of environment. But, I think it's one of those things where today you may not think of your Facebook account as something that you use for causes or advocacy or work. But it may be something that's a longer lead play when you do care about something that you want to get done. So why is it important? I talked a little bit about this. Cory Booker is kind of always like the case study I feel like that's held up. But I remember before he was even in Congress, he was tweeting about, shoveling snow as a mayor on the street. And essentially, like, what I would like you to take away from the arc of a Cory Booker is well before he was a senator, he was essentially thinking about himself like his own media outlet. He was essentially live tweeting and posting what he was doing on a daily basis, and he was growing followers. He was growing an audience, and that really propelled him to where he is today. But it's something where it can be as basic as what I'm having for lunch or a cute picture of my dog or my kids. But that may be the thing that brings a new follower on who then becomes a volunteer or an advocate or a spokesperson for you. So we'll talk a little bit about a diverse mix of content and what kinds of thing to post, but that's a good case study to think through. Once you start doing it, it's a little bit second nature. I chose this image because it's a member of Congress. So does anybody know whose picture this is from their social media account? So Debbie Wasserman Schultz has an entire Instagram that is just about cooking and food and clean eating. And so it's one of those things where it's not like she's sitting there with a congressional strategy in that account. It's just something that she's passionate about and that she cares about. But it's drawing new people and new followers that never would have probably followed her in the first place, either because they have different politics or because they're not from the same area or they just care about the same things when it comes to food. So it's interesting. I think a lot of people, I train on social media, so I think about these things this way, but normal human beings do not think about their lives and themselves as a content strategy. But essentially, that's what something like this is, where you're thinking about all of the different things that you care about and that you're interested in and how you would display them on your social media accounts. And then amplifying key issues, causes, and campaigns. I think and this is where the cocktail party analogy kind of comes back. If you every single day were walking up to somebody at a party and saying, hey, I want you to get involved in preventing cancer. Hey, I want you to involved in preventing cancer over and over, people would be like, that lady is weird and obnoxious, and I don't want to be around her. Back away slowly, right? So that's why it's so important to have a distributed presence and to really think about things that you're posting on social media. If your real goal is cause related, that you want to do a mix of cause and personal and professional, because it is that same thing. You're essentially walking up to the people who follow you and saying things over and over. I think the things that you'll see there underneath the picture and the handle is a little bio, and it only gives you 140 characters. And so you really have to sort of choose what you want to put there. I think the ones that are most interesting are when people are playful. So like, hold on, I'm going to get this right. So Ted says, husband of Betty, love of my life, father of 2 great kids, U.S. Air Force veteran, member of Congress, in that order. Also, I don't take orders from Vladimir Putin. So, you don't have to be so serious with the way that you portray yourself. And I think that's something that, I don't know about you guys, but that's something I certainly struggle with, is what's the right balance between playfulness and professionalism. And I think it really kind of depends on the person. Profile tips. Avatars in particular, that's the square box where on all of these social networks it sort of shows your face or whatever you put there. I find that women a lot of times, I'm gonna put ourselves out there. Women a lot of times have a very sort of casual picture that we snap of ourselves or at a party or something, and we crop our friends out of, and we sort of look like we're out I don't know, on some kind of fashion shoot. And I feel like the men tend to have these very professional shots done. So maybe less so in a congressional audience, but I think one of the things that I talk a lot to my women friends in media and technology about the importance of really thinking through a headshot. If you're going to put pictures up there and you're using it as just something with your friends, you think about it in a different way. But if you're going to put yourself out there with a cause, that's something that anybody could pull that picture from. You really want to have something that showcases yourself in a professional way and makes you look and feel your best. So I feel like that's something that people don't talk enough about when they're setting up their profiles, is what do I want that picture to look and show. And then to the same extent, I see all the time people have their avatar picture here and then leave this blank because it's something new that happened on Facebook and they don't want to deal with it, and what do you even put there, and all of these kinds of things. So a cover photo, and this is almost on every social network now, is basically just a big backdrop that highlights the head of your page. You can put whatever you want there. If you're struggling with coming up with something to put there, either a landscape of some place that you love, or a recent picture, of friends. It's kind of that long photo there. But if you're trying to get out there on a cause in particular, I will tell you a little secret tip of people who work in social media. If you don't have a cover photo there, Facebook and Twitter in particular take that as you don't know what you're doing kind of thing. And if it's not filled out, they actually put you further down in news feeds, because it's essentially a sign that this is not a top tier account. And so when they do their algorithm that essentially puts things higher in the news feed to different people, if everything's not filled out, and that's why it's important to have a great bio and photo and cover photo. Part of it is it's you branding yourself, but part of it is you're working an algorithm behind the scenes. And if you don't have all of those sort of boxes checked, the platform will essentially say this is not an active user.
And this Mary Himes thing is an awesome example. She did this on her own before we had We Prevent Cancer.
Well, do you want to say a little bit about it? Because I feel like you know a deeper story.
I mean, she just was going to a dermatologist. And without us, this was without us even generating or asking her to do it. But she took a picture of herself in the mirror in her hospital gown, getting ready to have her skin checked. So it says, I had my annual appointment today with my dermatologist. Please make an appointment for yourself to make sure you don't have or get skin cancer. And if you're lucky, your doctor will have fairly chic gowns to wear, like this one, spread the word, preventative medicine. Now, if that said We Prevent Cancer, it would have been perfect. That's exactly the kind of thing we're talking about. Your everyday stuff. If you're going to the gym, if you're going to yoga, if you're going to a doctor's appointment, if you're you make a healthy meal, like a clean cooking with your congresswoman, which was the Debbie Wasserman Schultz thing. These normal, or if you're walking in a 5K or whatever, just your everyday activities that are, furthering these messages.
Yeah.
Other people see them and it sort of makes them think about it. So it's very, very simple. And she told me she got people back from that, because I said, because I'm just friends with her, and I saw it randomly. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so great. She's like, I got people that got back to me and said, I made my appointment. Thanks for reminding me, kind of thing. So, the impact you have is so much more than you would ever think. Sometimes people just need to be reminded, or they just need to focus, or they need to have their focus redirected.
Yep.
So there's a bazillion things that you're already doing, healthy behaviors that you're doing right now, that if you share them, it engages people.
Yeah, I have found, and I don't know if it's organized or if it's just kind of happening, but I have found that I've had a lot of friends like live tweeting going to mammograms and being like, this is like, because it's such a weird thing and everyone like hates it. So like all these like women are kind of like sharing experiences. And again, like you're getting a mammogram, so you're not probably taking a picture of it, but sort of just the anxiety that goes into it and like talking about the appointment. That wasn't as bad as I thought, or like, ouch, that hurt, or like whatever. But like that's.
The word you feel so great.
Yeah.
So glad I
but
did that.
But the amplification of the need to get tested is something that's so huge to the cause. And so it's, if you're saying it and you have 100 people following you and you get 5 more people into mammograms, that's a huge difference. It may be a life-saving difference for one of your friends.
Colonoscopies,
Sure.
There's a lot of anxiety around it,
Yep.
or whatever. So yeah.
But I think that, like, to your point too, and this one is a good post on it. I think you can. It's all about your personality, but like the ones that I find most engaging are when people are like funny and sarcastic and real about it, because it's just sort of something like everybody hates, but everybody has to go through, and so being real with your friends about it and the way that you talk about it, I think is really crucial to that awareness piece and sort of destigmatizing it. One of the things that I think on this who to follow section, and maybe we can either talk about it in the open discussion later, or if you guys decide to do like a closed group to share tips and best practices later. But who to follow is really subjective. It's it's who you think is funny or who you think is informative or whatever. We tried to share a few best practices here. I'm a longtime John Dingell Twitter fan, so I think he is not only a hilarious sort of Twitter best practice, but he's like mixing it up and live tweeting the basketball tournament and like debates and sort of all these different things. So like you don't have to be as active as John Dingell is, but I think he's a best practice for what a profile looks like that is both personal and professional and cause and advocacy related. It's that sort of 360 look at a human being, and also probably a good example for how to handle Twitter trolls, because like sometimes he engages and sometimes he doesn't, and when he does in a beautiful way, I screen grab them and add them to my presentations on how to push back. Local groups, national groups, their leadership, at Prevent Cancer, RWJF News, whatever causes you care about, I generally search keywords and try to find accounts and people who work there, and really people who are making an impact. The sort of second tier of that is if you're already following those people, then finding influencers in that space. That's, again, a whole nother like tier 2, tier 3 of this thing is like social media influencers and who online can have the biggest impact to your cause. I bet a lot of people would probably put you guys in the influencers category. Local reporters and news outlets. So when I teach media relations and press secretaries how to better use social media for what they do, one of the things that we do right off the bat is take that beat list of beat reporters from your hometown, from the issues that you care about, and we go in, we find and follow them on Twitter in particular, but other social media properties where they are. You're essentially curating your own news feed. This is not only so that you're aware of what they're posting, but I think it's more important to follow individual reporters than outlets, because I also find it to be a great media relations tool. As people are talking about their day and what's happening, you often can get an early look at what kinds of stories they're writing and get ahead of that and get into them, or also pitch them stories through. So my media relations skills and relationships are 100 times better today after all of my social media than they were when I worked in media relations full time. But part of that is because I'm having, again, like holistic 360 conversations with people. So I'm talking to Chuck Todd about University of Miami football and obscure Florida politics in addition to pitching him stories. Accounts that just generally speak to your interests. None of these social media platforms are going to be worth a damn to you if you're not following things you care about or find entertaining or fun. So make them fun also. Find people that either are entertainers or comedians or friends or whatever, if you have questions about like who you should be following, that like I ask this periodically just kind of for fun to see what people come up with and say, especially on like Twitter or something, I'll be like, who are you following that is your favorite person on Twitter that I should be following, and kind of just see what people say and kind of get feedback. And it's just a really neat way to enlarge your circle, which is what a lot of this is just really about.
Just to pause on this for a second, and if it's okay with you, we'll share these.
Yeah.
This PowerPoint.
100%.
But Summer Sanders was one of the congressional families. She's somebody that we honored last year. She had skin cancer. She was a swimmer. She is a swimmer, and she found her first or second skin cancer on her own. And I mean, I guess she had melanoma, which you could see with a swimmer. You're outside all the time, but she actually then had a suspicious mole, and her doctor was like, "Don't worry about it." She's like, "No, I am worried about it," and it turned out to be a second melanoma. So that's why we picked her. Sherry Pagano is a UMass medical. She is from our district, but that just happened to be a coincidence. She is the main person who did research on tanning beds on college campuses. A lot of times supported by college campuses. You can use your food card to get a tan, which is crazy. So she's the one that did the definitive study on that, and is working to try to pressure colleges to back away from those policies. And Dr. Ann is a nutritionist, and I'm sorry.
Do the parents know about that?
Yeah, that's exactly the.
I went to Florida State. I can't even imagine how much that is abused there.
And either they're literally on the campuses or near the campuses,
Yeah.
but sort of semi-subsidized or promoted
Mhm.
as part of the
Health
as
programs.
part of the marketing tools.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then Dr. Ann is a nutritionist that works with our foundation a lot, and she's done several seminars with us, and she does what to eat, what not to eat, that kind of stuff. So those are why we sort of a little bit more curated for our audience.
Yeah, and then a sort of second tier way of, if you're looking for other interesting people to follow or influencers, is to sort of rabbit hole down who Summer Sanders is following and see if there are any interesting accounts you find there, or who's following her. I actually, like, one of my, speaking of the Donald Trump stuff earlier, I think like one of the things that's so interesting is Donald Trump wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning and gets on Twitter. What does he see, right? Like what you see on your Twitter is fundamentally different than what he sees. And so I think it's fascinating. I've actually like built a Twitter list that reverse engineers how he looks at Twitter and what accounts he's following. So if you're trying to influence somebody, whether it's a reporter or a celebrity or whatever, looking at who they follow is a really interesting way of sort of reverse engineering media relations, because you want to get those people that they're following to talk about your issue also, because it helps bubble up to the bigger person. Deep. And then just, again, accounts that speak to your interests. We've featured Whole Foods and Eating Well magazine, Be Smart, Eat Smart. Some of these are brands, obviously, and media outlets that you've heard of before. Be Smart, Eat Smart, I think, is an interesting one in particular. There are all of these people and sort of brands that are loosely defined famous on the internet, but like maybe not like something that's like in real life. So bloggers, sort of lifestyle people who like just have really big followings that might be interesting to engage on your causes are things that you want to kind of understand. Accounts that speak to your interest. This is just a whole sort of like roundabout of sort of Washington, D.C. fitness kind of accounts. This is like a good smattering, but if you're a Cubs fan or a White Sox fan, this looks a little different. If you love yoga but you hate spinning, or you hate exercise in general, like maybe this isn't like the exact distribution that you have. But you want to follow things that are not just about the cause or just about the news things that you're doing to make it more interesting to you.